There are many places with extraordinary realities, but surely you would never have imagined that there could be a country that was born after one of the greatest natural disasters in the history of mankind, and that in this place, to prevent a man from having several wives, the government has created a series of taxes to make it more and more expensive and complicated. In this new video of Uncensored World, we will know in more detail Bangladesh, one of the most remote and unknown, but at the same time also extraordinary countries on the planet. Bangladesh, one of the most overcrowded and dirty places on the planet, with street stalls that will surprise you and where you would hardly stop to eat. A country where a man can have, as long as he can keep them, more than 4 wives at the same time, although the government tried to prevent it in a surprising way. One of the most densely populated places, and also polluted and dirty, with such extraordinary curiosities as being one of the main exporters of clothing, containing the largest mangrove forest in the world, or having occurred here one of the greatest catastrophes and tragedies in history that, although it may sound strange, helped to create this nation. Pay attention and don't miss this video, because we assure you that discovering Bangladesh with us will surprise you. Let's get started. Bangladesh is one of the most fertile areas of the planet. This reality has to do with the fact that one of the most biodiverse and unique regions of the planet, known as the Sundarbans, is located here. The Sundarbans are the largest mangrove forest in the world, stretching across Bangladesh and the Indian state of West Bengal. This vast expanse of mangroves is not only a vital green lung for the region, but also a crucial ecosystem for the survival of numerous species. This extraordinary and unique place is home to the famous Bengal tiger, an emblematic and endangered species. In addition to these tigers, the Sundarbans are also home to a wide variety of wildlife, including crocodiles, gangetic dolphins, and an incredible diversity of birds and fish. The mangroves offer a unique habitat that supports these species, providing shelter and a rich source of food. The interdependence between flora and fauna in the Sundarbans makes this ecosystem extraordinarily resilient, but also vulnerable to environmental change. Its geographical position at the confluence of major rivers and its proximity to the sea make it particularly vulnerable to floods and cyclones, but it is also one of the most agriculturally and fisheries productive regions. Bangladesh is also one of the most overpopulated countries on the planet. With a population of over 160 million, it is the 8th most populous country on Earth. Its population density is one of the highest on the planet, with approximately 1,265 people per square kilometer. This extreme density, coupled with realities such as Bangladesh being one of the world's leading exporters of clothing and apparel, poses significant challenges in terms of infrastructure and resources, causing it to also become, as you will see below, one of the most polluted countries on the planet. The origin of Bangladesh as a nation is relatively recent and has much to do with one of the greatest catastrophes in human history, as you will now see, a monstrous cyclone that took the lives of hundreds of thousands of people known as Cyclone Bhola. Cyclone Bhola occurred on November 13, 1970, and was one of the deadliest cyclones in recorded history, killing between 300,000 and 500,000 people in the Ganges Delta region, which includes present-day Bangladesh, at the time known as East Pakistan. The handling of the disaster by the West Pakistan government, which then controlled what is now Bangladesh, was seen as extremely ineffective and negligent. The lack of a quick and adequate response to the natural disaster fueled the already existing discontent among the people of East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, who felt marginalized and exploited by the central government of West Pakistan. The perception of neglect and negligence increased political and social tension, and so it was that in the December general elections of that year, the Awami League Party, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and which had its support base in East Pakistan, won an overwhelming majority in the National Assembly. Despite this, the West Pakistan government was reluctant to transfer power. These tensions eventually led to the East Pakistan Uprising and the outbreak of the Bangladesh Liberation War in March 1971. The war culminated in the independence of Bangladesh on December 16, 1971, after intense fighting and with the support of India. Thus, the Cyclone Bhola catastrophe had a direct impact on the independence process of Bangladesh, as it exacerbated tensions between East and West Pakistan and catalyzed the events that led to the War of Liberation. Thus, Bangladesh became independent from Pakistan in the year 1971, after a brutal war of liberation that left deep scars on its people and territory. Bangladesh's rich culture is also reflected in its language, Bengali, which is the mother tongue of the vast majority of its population. The country also has a vibrant literary and artistic tradition, with prominent figures such as the poet Rabindranath Tagore, who was the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. An interesting fact about Bangladesh is its important role in the global textile industry. Bangladesh is one of the largest exporters of clothing and textiles, and its economy is heavily dependent on this industry. In addition, the country has made significant strides in areas such as microfinance, with the Grameen Bank and its founder Muhammad Yunus winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 for his efforts to create economic and social development from the bottom up. This reflects the resilient and entrepreneurial spirit of the country, which continues to face and overcome significant challenges. Despite this progress, Bangladesh is considered one of the dirtiest countries in the world, and now you will easily understand many of the reasons behind this reality. Bangladesh is known for its abundance of flies, which presents an additional challenge for any tourist or visitor to the country. If you wish to visit this place, it is more than advisable to include insect repellent in your luggage to protect yourself from these pests and enjoy your stay in the country. This situation reflects the sanitation and cleanliness problems faced by the country, highlighting the difficulties in waste management and the maintenance of public hygiene. In many cities of the country, waste garbage cans are conspicuous by their absence, and the amount of waste is colossal due to realities such as the one you used to know about, this being one of the main creators and exporters of clothes in the world. All this leads to plagues such as flies and other realities that you will now know in more detail. Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is the most developed urban area in terms of quality of life, but it is also the most populated city, with some 23 million inhabitants, and one of the 10 most overpopulated cities on the planet. This large concentration of people increases the problems with cleanliness and sanitation. The crowded streets and lack of adequate services contribute to the accumulation of garbage and unhealthy living conditions that have a lot to do with the short life expectancy of its inhabitants compared to developed countries. It is important to understand that Bangladesh is one of the world's poorest economic nations, a country where most people earn less than $1 a day and perform their work in a rudimentary manner. The minimum wage in the country is so low that it hovers around $95, making the average income extremely low. This widespread poverty limits the ability of the government and citizens to invest in infrastructure or healthy living conditions, causing major hygiene and pollution problems in the country. In addition to this, these low wages make the country one of the cheapest places for labor worldwide, which attracts large international companies. Many world-renowned brands have factories in the country, taking advantage of these low labor costs. Unfortunately, many of these locations often do not follow strict environmental standards, contributing to pollution and deteriorating air and water quality. When walking through the streets of the country's capital, it is common to see people carrying objects on their heads due to the lack of access to vehicles. In addition, many tangled wires on poles reflect the country's poor infrastructure, a scene that seems to go back centuries, demonstrating the precarious conditions in which a large part of the population lives. Traffic flow on Bangladesh's roads is chaotic, with vehicles in constant motion and little regulation. Pedestrians face numerous dangers when crossing streets due to the lack of overpasses or underpasses, and the absence of traffic lights in many squares, where traffic flow depends on police guidance. Public transportation in Bangladesh is also limited and of poor quality. Old, overcrowded, and uncomfortable buses are the main option in the countryside, while in the cities, bicycle cabs are common. Many of these cabs operate without engines, powered solely by human effort. The riders, often men showing obvious signs of malnutrition, frequently carry additional passengers. This strenuous work is not only physically exhausting, but also reflects the difficult living conditions and the constant struggle to make ends meet in the country. Another striking reality in the country is the street stalls present on almost every street corner in its cities. Although the sale of food products is commonplace, the lack of hygiene is a constant concern that attracts a lot of attention. Moreover, if one day you come to one of these stalls and decide to have a bite to eat, we advise you to observe the hygiene measures. As you can see if you get here, the stalls and their surroundings are often in unsanitary conditions, and many vendors show inadequate personal hygiene, which discourages travelers from consuming food or drinks for fear of health problems. At this point of the video, we take the opportunity to ask you, would you dare to eat in these street stalls? Would you like to visit Bangladesh? Pause the video and leave us your comment telling us what has caught your attention. Doing so is the best way you have to support Uncensored World, so that we continue working to bring you interesting content like this. So, thank you. On top of all this, the country's low level of education contributes to environmental and health problems. Only 3 out of 10 people can read and write, which limits awareness of the importance of hygiene and proper waste management. Cities suffer from high levels of pollution, and the presence of litter is widespread, further compounding the challenges Bangladesh faces in improving its clean and sanitary conditions. Apart from hygiene and filth in this overcrowded country, another of the most striking elements at present has to do with multiple marriages and the efforts being made by the government to eliminate or curb this type of practice. In Bangladesh, the main religion is Islam, and approximately 90% of the population is Muslim. This predominance is due to the history and culture of the country, which was influenced by the Islamic conquests in the Indian subcontinent during the Middle Ages. The Bengal Sultanate, and later the Mughal Empire, established Islam as the predominant religion in the region. The integration of Islamic practices and values into daily life in Bangladesh has endured over the centuries, especially after the separation from Pakistan and its independence. Thus, one of the practices derived from Islam that is still prevalent in Bangladesh is polygamy, which allows men to marry multiple wives. According to Islamic law, a man can have up to 4 wives simultaneously, as long as he can treat them equally and fairly. Although not all men in Bangladesh practice polygamy, this option is legally permitted and followed in certain communities and socioeconomic contexts, especially in rural areas or among conservative groups, allowing some men to marry even more than 4 wives. In Bangladesh, polygamy is a legal practice permitted for both Muslims and Hindus, although it is subject to certain regulations and restrictions. Islamic law, based on the Quran, allows a man to have up to 4 wives simultaneously, as long as he can treat them equally and fairly. However, in an effort to moderate this practice and address the associated social and economic problems, Dhaka authorities have implemented a tax system that seeks to discourage multiple marriages. The Dhaka South Corporation has introduced a tax scheme that increases exponentially with the number of wives. Under the new regulations, a man must pay 90 cents for marrying his first wife, while the tax for a second wife is $45. A third wife costs $181, and the tax amounts to $453 for having 4 wives at the same time. This graduated approach to taxation is intended to make the practice of polygamy less attractive and more difficult to maintain financially. The tax increase has reignited the debate over polygamy in Bangladesh, generating mixed views. Women's rights activists and critics argue that while this measure may reduce the incidence of multiple marriages in Dhaka, it will not completely solve the problems related to polygamy or address gender inequalities. In addition, the lack of legal records of many marriages in the country raises doubts about the effectiveness of the tax in practice. Meanwhile, Some other cities in Bangladesh are considering implementing similar measures in an effort to moderate polygamy without banning it altogether. But if there is one scar that no inhabitant of Bangladesh forgets in its recent history, it has to do with the deadliest cyclone in the history of mankind and the geographical features of this country. On the afternoon of November 12, 1970, a powerful cyclone formed in the warm waters of the Bay of Bengal. This meteorological phenomenon, known as Cyclone Bhola, began to brew in the depths of a restless ocean, hidden in the currents and mists of the monsoon. What appeared to be an ordinary storm in the region of Bangladesh, a country notorious for its vulnerability to natural disasters, quickly became one of the most devastating cyclones in history. Cyclone Bhola advanced with relentless force towards the coast of Bangladesh, bringing with it colossal waves and hurricane-force winds that swept everything in its path. The devastation was immediate. Thousands of houses and structures collapsed, submerged by the fury of the sea and torrential rains. The lack of resilient infrastructure and poor preparedness for such a calamity contributed to the magnitude of the tragedy. The population, already vulnerable and unprotected, was faced with a wave of destruction that left an alarming initial death toll. However, the impact of Cyclone Bhola did not end with the storm. Widespread flooding and destruction of homes created a breeding ground for disease and health problems that spread rapidly. The lack of sanitation facilities and adequate drinking water exacerbated the crisis, leading to outbreaks of infectious diseases. Death and suffering continued long after the cyclone had gone, with disease and malnutrition taking an additional toll on the already traumatized population. In the shadow of the storm, Bangladesh faced a tragedy that lingered beyond the winds and waves, revealing the fragility of life in an unforgiving environment. Such disasters have to do with the fact that this country is located in one of the most cyclone, earthquake, and flood-prone regions, as it lies at the crossroads of dangerous weather routes. The country's geography, with its extensive alluvial plain and proximity to the sea, makes it susceptible to these natural disasters. The combination of its low-lying topography and rushing rivers creates an environment where cyclones can unleash their fury with few restrictions, exacerbating the impact of their devastating storms. Despite these challenges, in recent years the country has annually ranked among the 5 fastest-growing countries in the world. The large population and the optimistic outlook of many of its well-educated and hopeful inhabitants have fueled a narrative of enrichment and accelerated development. However, the reality on the ground paints a much more complex and bittersweet picture. High population density and persistent poverty continue to limit progress, with many people living in deplorable conditions and struggling to survive in an environment marked by resource scarcity and poor infrastructure. The paradox of Bangladesh manifests itself in the contrast between economic growth and the harsh reality of its population. While some enjoy a relatively comfortable life, the vast majority face extreme hardship. On city streets and in makeshift neighborhoods, lack of adequate housing, lack of sanitation facilities, and reliance on discarded resources reflect a constant struggle for a dignified existence. Although the country is moving towards a promising future, the contrast between progress and persistent poverty remains constant evidence of the complex reality in which Bangladesh finds itself. This country, often associated with climatic, environmental, and social challenges, also offers natural landscapes that contrast fascinatingly with its hardships. Among its natural treasures are some stunning tropical beaches and vast forests that paint a more idyllic picture of the nation. Among these, Cox's Bazar Beach stands out, which is famous for being recognized as the longest natural sandy beach in the world. This beach, located in southeastern Bangladesh, stretches for approximately 120 kilometers along the coast of the Bay of Bengal. It is a golden sandy beach known for its length and scenic beauty, which attracts both local and international tourists, being one of the most beautiful and visited places in the country. Its length and tropical surroundings offer a unique experience for those looking to enjoy endless beaches and warm waters. In addition to Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh is home to lush forests that enrich its natural landscape. The Sundarbans forest, for example, is the largest mangrove forest in the world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This ecosystem is not only essential to the global biodiversity and health of this country, but also provides vital habitat for endangered species such as the Bengal tiger. The extensive forests and wetlands of the Sundarbans are an ecological marvel that contrasts with the image often associated with the country due to its socioeconomic problems. Another of the most striking realities of this country is the large number of floating villages it contains. One of its best examples occurs in the Barisal district in southern Bangladesh. In this area, there are floating villages built on platforms that adapt to the seasonal variations of the water level. During the rainy season, when rivers overflow and the surrounding land is flooded, these floating platforms allow residents to go about their daily lives without being washed away. Houses, markets, and roads are mounted on wooden and bamboo structures that float on the water, creating a unique landscape that changes with the seasons. Life in these floating villages is deeply influenced by this aquatic environment. Most daily activities are carried out on boats, from transporting goods to moving people. In these villages, children, for example, must navigate boats to get to school, often making the journey alone. These children have become expert navigators from an early age, using small boats to cross the waters around their homes to reach educational institutions. This situation has led to the creation of innovative and adaptive solutions to ensure that education continues despite the difficult conditions. The living arrangements in these floating villages have led to a number of unique adaptations. Homes are built on platforms that can rise with the water level, while markets and community areas are designed to float and remain accessible throughout the year. Families often use boats for all their daily needs, including shopping for food and performing household chores. This lifestyle has fostered a deep connection to the aquatic environment and a surprising resilience to the challenges of living in such a flooded region. While life in these floating villages may appear idyllic and unique from an outsider's perspective, it also presents significant challenges. The dependence on water for nearly every activity and the constant need to adapt to seasonal fluctuations require specialized skills and knowledge. Conditions can also be difficult during periods of extreme flooding, when the risk of disease and accessibility to resources can be compromised. However, the ability of these communities to innovate and adapt remains a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of their inhabitants. As you can see, there is much natural beauty in this country, but unfortunately the sad past, environmental catastrophes, lack of infrastructure, and cheap labor makes this beautiful country one of the most complicated, dirty, and polluted on the planet. From Uncensored World, we hope that this tour of Bangladesh has been as exciting for you as it has been for us. Thinking about it, and the effort it takes us to make these videos, we would love you to leave us a nice like and your comment. It is the best way you have to help us to continue bringing you the best content every week. If you enjoyed this video and you are not yet subscribed, do not wait any longer, and do it now by activating the little bell to not miss the fascinating videos we do every week. Videos like this one that you can enjoy now to know another of the most fascinating corners of the planet. Do not miss it and discover the wonders that this place has to offer.